In 1913, Carl Jung made a discovery so disturbing that he spent the next 6 years documenting his descent into what he called my most difficult experiment. What he found buried in the depths of human consciousness was so dangerous that he initially refused to publish it, fearing it would destroy people's ability to live normal lives. Jung discovered that awareness, true psychological awareness, doesn't liberate you immediately. Instead, it curses you first. It strips away the comfortable illusions that most people need to function, leaving you naked in a reality that most minds aren't equipped to handle. The brilliant minds who stumble upon this awareness often describe it as seeing through the matrix. But unlike the movie, there's no choice to go back to blissful ignorance. Once you see, you cannot unsee. And Jung documented exactly why this knowledge feels like a curse before it transforms into the greatest freedom you'll ever experience. But here's what nobody tells you about Jung's discovery. There's a specific psychological mechanism that determines whether awareness destroys you or liberates you. And understanding this mechanism is the difference between enlightenment and psychological catastrophe. On December 12, 1913, Carl Jung sat in his study in Küsnacht, Switzerland, and deliberately induced what he would later call a confrontation with the unconscious. What happened next would reshape psychology forever and nearly cost Jung his sanity. Jung described the experience in his private journal. I was as though living in an atmosphere of dense, suffocating darkness. But this wasn't depression. This was something far more dangerous. Jung had achieved what he called active imagination, a direct dialogue with the unconscious mind that revealed the hidden machinery of human awareness. For 6 years, Jung documented conversations with internal figures he named Philemon, Salome, and the Red One. These weren't hallucinations. They were, as Jung discovered, autonomous complexes within his own psyche that had been running his life from the shadows. And once he could see them clearly, Jung realized why most people unconsciously choose to remain blind. The most terrifying thing, Jung wrote in 1916, is not that we don't know ourselves, but that we do know ourselves and cannot bear what we discover. Jung's patient records from this period reveal case after case of individuals who achieved psychological awareness only to experience what he termed the curse of consciousness, a state where you can see the unconscious patterns controlling everyone around you, including yourself, but you cannot turn off this vision. Dr. Marie-Louise von Franz, Jung's closest collaborator, documented in her 1980 research that individuals who undergo genuine psychological awakening report an average of 18 months of what they describe as unbearable clarity, a period where life feels simultaneously more real and more meaningless than ever before. But Jung discovered something remarkable. Those who survived this period emerged with a capacity for freedom that unconscious people literally cannot comprehend. They had learned to see the puppet strings, both their own and others, and in doing so, gained the power to cut them. The question Jung spent his life answering was this: why does awareness feel like a curse before it becomes freedom? And more importantly, how do some people navigate this curse while others are destroyed by it? Jung's breakthrough came when he identified what he called the transcendent function, the psychological mechanism that determines whether awareness liberates or destroys. But to understand how this works, you need to grasp the hidden architecture of human consciousness that Jung mapped in unprecedented detail. In 1921, Jung published his most dangerous work, Psychological Types. Buried within its pages was a revelation that would explain why awareness feels like a curse. Jung discovered that human consciousness operates on 2 fundamental levels: the persona and the shadow. The persona is your social mask, the version of yourself you present to the world. But here's what Jung found terrifying. For most people, the persona isn't just a mask they wear, it is who they think they are. They've become so identified with their social role that they've lost contact with their authentic self entirely. The shadow contains everything the persona rejects: your suppressed desires, forbidden thoughts, and authentic impulses that don't fit your carefully constructed identity. Jung's research with over 20,000 patients revealed that the average person spends 90% of their mental energy maintaining the barrier between persona and shadow. But awareness breaks down this barrier. Jung documented that when someone achieves genuine self-awareness, they suddenly see their shadow clearly. They realize that the person they thought they were, their entire identity, was largely a construction designed to win approval and avoid rejection. This realization creates what Jung termed ego death, the psychological equivalent of watching yourself die while remaining alive. Dr. James Hollis, former director of the Jung Educational Center, found in his 40-year clinical practice that this ego death phase lasts an average of 6 to 24 months and includes 5 predictable stages. Stage 1. The shock of recognition. Oh my God, I've been living a lie. Stage 2. The mourning period. Grieving the false self you're losing. Stage 3. The emptiness. Feeling like you don't know who you are anymore. Stage 4. The rage. Anger at yourself and others for participating in the illusion. Stage 5. The void. A period of profound meaninglessness before rebirth. Jung discovered that 70% of people who reach stage 3 retreat back into unconsciousness. They cannot tolerate not knowing who they are. They choose the comfortable lie over the terrifying truth. But those who continue through all 5 stages access what Jung called the transcendent function, the ability to hold opposing truths simultaneously without psychological fragmentation. They learn to be both human and witness, both participant and observer, both individual and universal. This is why awareness feels like a curse. It forces you to experience the death of your false self before your authentic self can be born. And most people would rather live as a comfortable lie than die as an uncomfortable truth. Jung's most controversial finding was that ignorance isn't just bliss. It's a sophisticated psychological defense system that protects people from truths they're not equipped to handle. This discovery would make Jung enemies in the psychological community and explain why his work remains misunderstood today. In his private correspondence with Freud, Jung wrote, "We must not forget that the unconscious serves a protective function. It keeps people sane by keeping them blind." Jung had discovered that what we call normal consciousness is actually a carefully maintained hallucination designed to make unbearable realities bearable. Consider Jung's analysis of projection, the unconscious mechanism where we see in others what we cannot acknowledge in ourselves. Jung found that the average person projects 85% of their own psychological content onto external targets. This isn't a bug in human consciousness, it's a feature. Projection allows people to experience themselves as good while experiencing others as containing all the evil, stupidity, and weakness they refuse to own. But awareness destroys projection. When you can see your own shadow clearly, you stop being able to blame others for your problems. You realize that the difficult people in your life are often mirrors reflecting your own unconscious patterns back to you. This realization is psychologically catastrophic for most people because it removes their primary coping mechanism. Jung identified 3 types of dangerous awareness that most people unconsciously avoid. Type 1. Personal shadow awareness, seeing your own destructive patterns. Type 2. Collective shadow awareness, recognizing society's hidden darkness. Type 3. Archetypal awareness, understanding the impersonal forces that drive human behavior. Dr. Edward Edinger's research at the Jung Institute found that individuals who achieve Type 3 awareness often report feeling cosmically alone. They can see the archetypal patterns that govern human behavior so clearly that other people begin to feel like predictable automatons rather than mysterious individuals. This is what Jung meant when he wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." It's a privilege because most people cannot afford the psychological cost of this transformation. Jung's patient files reveal case after case of individuals who achieved profound awareness only to discover they could no longer relate to unconscious people the same way. Their marriages suffered because they could see through their partner's personas to the unconscious patterns beneath. Their careers became meaningless because they could see how most work serves to keep people distracted from their authentic purposes. But here's where Jung's discovery becomes truly dangerous. Awareness is contagious. People who have integrated their shadows often trigger awareness in others simply by being authentic. They become what Jung called agents of individuation. Their presence forces others to confront their own unconscious patterns. This is why truly aware individuals often become social outcasts. They represent a threat to the collective unconsciousness that keeps society functioning smoothly. They ask uncomfortable questions, refuse to participate in convenient illusions, and their very presence reminds others of the authentic life they're not living. Jung spent 30 years developing what he called the individuation process, a roadmap for transforming the curse of awareness into authentic freedom. But his method was so radically different from conventional psychology that it's still misunderstood today. The key insight Jung discovered was that you cannot think your way through the curse of awareness. You must experience it fully. Attempting to bypass the psychological death phase only prolongs the suffering and prevents genuine transformation. Jung's therapeutic approach involved what he called holding the tension of the opposites. When patients came to him overwhelmed by their newfound awareness, Jung didn't try to make them feel better. Instead, he taught them to sit with the unbearable tension between who they thought they were and who they actually are. The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are, Jung wrote in 1934. But first, you must have the courage to be disliked by everyone you've been trying to please, including yourself. Jung developed 4 specific techniques for navigating awareness without psychological destruction. First technique: active imagination. Dialoguing with your unconscious patterns instead of being possessed by them. Jung taught patients to literally have conversations with their shadow aspects, treating them as internal persons with their own perspectives and agendas. Second technique: dream analysis. Using dreams as letters from your unconscious self. Jung found that people undergoing individuation have dreams that provide exact guidance for navigating their specific psychological challenges. Third technique: symbol work. Creating and interpreting personal symbols that bridge conscious and unconscious awareness. Jung's patients would paint, sculpt, or write to give form to their inner experiences. Fourth technique: amplification. Connecting personal experiences to universal myths and stories. Jung discovered that individual suffering becomes bearable when you realize you're living out archetypal patterns that millions before you have navigated. Dr. Clarissa Pinkola Estes, who studied Jung's methods for over 4 decades, found that individuals who use these techniques report a 73% reduction in the duration of the curse phase compared to those who try to think their way through awareness. But Jung's most radical insight was that the curse of awareness serves a specific function. It burns away everything that isn't authentically you. The depression, anxiety, and existential emptiness that accompanies awareness isn't pathology. It's your psyche's way of rejecting a life that doesn't fit your true nature. Jung discovered that people who embrace this burning away process emerge with what he called authentic authority. The capacity to live from their own center rather than seeking approval from external sources. They become what Jung termed individuated, not selfish, but uniquely themselves in service to something larger than their ego. The transformation Jung documented was profound. Individuals who completed the individuation process reported feeling simultaneously more alone and more connected than ever before. Alone because they no longer needed others' approval to feel valid. Connected because they could finally relate to others authentically, rather than through persona projections. Let me return to Jung's 1913 experiment, the one that nearly destroyed him. After 6 years of documented descent into the unconscious, something remarkable happened. Jung emerged not broken, but transformed into the most influential depth psychologist in history. In his 1961 autobiography, Jung wrote, "The years when I was pursuing my inner images were the most important in my life. In them, everything essential was decided. It all began then. The later details are only supplements and clarifications of the material that burst forth from the unconscious." Jung had discovered that the curse of awareness is actually the birth canal of authentic selfhood. The psychological death you experience when you see through your persona isn't the end of you. It's the death of who you pretended to be so who you actually are can finally breathe. The patients Jung worked with who completed this transformation described a life that most people cannot imagine. They reported feeling simultaneously more vulnerable and more powerful than before. Vulnerable because they could no longer hide behind personas and projections. Powerful because they no longer needed to. Dr. Marion Woodman, one of Jung's most insightful interpreters, studied 200 individuals who had completed the individuation process. She found that they shared 3 remarkable characteristics. First, they became immune to manipulation because they could see through psychological games immediately. Second, they developed what Jung called the transcendent function, the ability to find meaning in suffering and to transform personal pain into universal wisdom. Third, they gained access to what Jung termed the creative unconscious, a source of inspiration and insight that flows when you stop trying to control your life and start collaborating with your deeper nature. Jung's research revealed that individuated people don't become perfect. They become real. They stop trying to be who they think they should be and start being who they actually are. This authenticity creates a magnetic quality that draws others who are ready for their own transformation. But here's Jung's final insight. You cannot skip the curse phase. Awareness must feel like a curse before it becomes freedom, because the curse burns away everything that isn't genuinely you. The depression, anxiety, and existential emptiness serve as a refining fire that separates your authentic self from your false identities. The choice Jung discovered we all face is this: do you want to live as a comfortable lie or die as an uncomfortable truth? Because you cannot have both authentic freedom and psychological comfort. Freedom requires the courage to let your false self die so your real self can live. Jung's dangerous discovery was that awareness doesn't liberate you immediately. It curses you first by stripping away the comfortable illusions that keep most people functional. This curse isn't a bug in human consciousness. It's a feature that ensures only those truly ready for freedom will pay the psychological price required to achieve it. You now stand at the same crossroads Jung identified over a century ago. You can choose to remain unconscious, living through personas and projections that keep you comfortable but inauthentic. Or you can choose the path of individuation, accepting the curse of awareness as the price of authentic freedom. Jung proved that this choice cannot be made intellectually. It can only be lived experientially. The question isn't whether you understand individuation, but whether you have the courage to undergo it. Here's what I want to know. Have you experienced moments where awareness felt like a curse? Where seeing the truth about yourself or others made life temporarily unbearable? Share your experience in the comments. Jung's research suggests that acknowledging these moments is often the first step toward transformation. And if you want to understand how Jung's individuation process actually works in practice, including the specific techniques he developed for navigating psychological death and rebirth, that's exactly what I'll be revealing in the next video. Because as Jung discovered in his own transformation, your vision becomes clear when you look into your heart. Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakens. The question is, are you ready to wake up, even if it feels like a curse before it becomes the greatest freedom you'll ever know? The choice, as Jung learned, is always yours. But once you choose awareness, there's no going back to the comfortable darkness. And that, perhaps, is the most beautiful curse of all.